It's a great pleasure to be here. I always enjoy coming to Austin, and it's a double pleasure to be able to be here and to talk about a topic that interests me and that I hope will interest some of you. I've titled my talk "Challenges for U.S. Broadband Policy: Competition, Investment, and Innovation." And the reason I've listed those things is that they are a real subset of the challenges confronting the next administration in broadband policy. I'm not going to talk at all about what may be the biggest challenge, which is privacy and security. I'm going to leave that to Marc. And you can't have a more expert presenter on that topic. Another topic that I'm not going to talk about, but which I think is one that will become more salient in the future, is the range of questions surrounding the issue of whether or not broadband communications and the internet are good for us. There's starting to be some rethinking of this idea that more, better, faster, more widely distributed is always a good thing. But then again, the internet is just a reflection of us, of all that is good and that is bad. And there are some real questions. Now, anyone who spends a lot of time in the classroom, as I do, certainly sees a lot of the downsides of the internet. Students spend a heck of a lot of time, I suspect, chatting, bidding on eBay, working on their MySpace pages and all manner of other things, and I wonder how much antitrust law or whatever it is that I'm teaching that particular semester they're absorbing. That's a downside, but I'm not going to talk about that set of issues, and I'm only going to touch on another very big question, which is access to broadband communications throughout society. It's obviously a critically important issue. I know that a number of you in the room have worked on that issue. I'll try to touch on that in the end. Instead, I'm going to talk about the issues related to infrastructure and competition and investment and innovation in the internet, because these are some of the regulatory issues that are currently front and center in Congress and at the Federal Communications Commission and indeed in the antitrust agencies. There are, broadly speaking, two sets of issues I wish to address. Those that have to do with our changing approach to regulation in telecommunications, which affects broadband regulation. And then I want to talk about vertical relationships between networks and content providers, the debate that flies under the banner of network neutrality. So the horizontal competition issues and regulation, and then the vertical issues, network neutrality. So platforms are often how people talk about broadband. There are broadband platforms. And what we really mean by platforms are networks or alternative infrastructures for transporting and delivering communications. And these could be the traditional landline communications networks, your telephone, wireless networks, cable networks, satellite systems. There are other technologies that are out there like broadband over power line and things like this. These are all the possible platforms that may allow content and service providers to reach you in your home. And platforms have gone from being companions, living happily ever after for decades, each providing its own service to consumers. Telephone carriers provided you your basic telephone service. Wireless operators gave you a higher priced for a long time mobile service. We had cable selling video, satellite serving rural customers, and power lines providing power. They've gone from being companions to being competitors. As digital technology advances, the relationship among platforms has become a lot less harmonious. Telephone carriers want to offer video, wireless operators want more voice traffic, cable operators want telephone customers, and satellite operators are no longer satisfied with the rural market. And they all want to provide internet access and online services.
A few years ago, I'm teaching a case and everyone has their laptops out and I'm heading towards some dramatic conclusion and I say, and so Justice O'Connor reasonably concluded something, and someone who was actually reading the case on their laptop said, well, actually, Professor, she says in the next paragraph something that seems a bit contradictory to what you just said. And I said, could you please go back to playing solitaire? I mean, what else, you know, really, it's completely unfair. So I wanted to begin by thanking Ken and Jim and the LBJ School and the Strauss Center for inviting me here today. I also wanted to recognize Gary Chapman, who's an old friend. Gary actually got me started in this field about 20 years ago. I was coming off Capitol Hill and I was thinking maybe I should take a fancy law firm job, and Gary actually persuaded me to do something that was much less lucrative, so thank you for that. But it was an interesting time, and we were looking in the early days at the social impact of computer technology, of the internet. I enjoy these conversations where people start measuring internet time roughly when Facebook was announced. That's like time zero, apparently, for the creation of the internet these days, but we go back a little bit further, I guess. So I'm going to talk about what I think is going to be a very interesting, very controversial, and I think probably also a very high-profile issue for the next administration. And that's the issue of privacy. I'm not quite as detailed as Howard is with respect to bullet points. I tend to focus on bumper stickers. So I'm going to be giving you a bumper sticker presentation. We have our own logo, in fact, for this issue, and that's our Privacy '08 campaign. It's nonpartisan. We're not backing any candidate. We just like the concept, and plus we downloaded this cool image and messed with it. So that's what I'm talking about. Now, why Privacy '08? Well, I only had so much space on this one slide, and I just wanted to hit the sort of the top level items, if you will. But there's a lot of reasons nowadays that I think people might be concerned about privacy issues in the United States. We had that wonderful program, Total Information Awareness, which you may recall was an effort to build these elaborate databases, link them all together, collect data that wasn't otherwise available, and kind of to merge it to predict all future terrorist acts. And this, by the way, was before Minority Report came out, which was, I thought, really was a remarkable insight. You may recall that they solved the privacy problem in Total Information Awareness by changing the name of the program. It became Terrorist Information Awareness. And when they made that announcement, we on the EPIC website appropriately said, name changed, problem solved. So that's one thing that people might be thinking about. They might be thinking about the Patriot Act, which is extraordinary law passed in the fall of 2001, reauthorized after, in fact, a very elaborate and extensive debate in Washington, not till the spring of 2006. It was actually set to expire in the fall of 2005, but there was quite a bit of debate over the sunset provisions. The domestic surveillance program, that's essentially the president's authority to look at who you're calling. I mean, do you call your folks enough? Apparently this is something the administration needs to know. They solved the privacy problems there also by renaming it. It's now the Terrorism Surveillance Program. We have Real ID, which is going to keep people in a number of states in the U.S. off of commercial airplanes after May 11th. Fusion centers, which I'll tell you a bit about in a moment. And the absence of any real progress on federal privacy laws over the last few years. So there are a lot of things happening out there. Now in the Washington